A common complaint about archaeological sites, ruins, or rocks is that they all look the same. Some old stones spread onto a desolate place. Many people prefer modern things, as if lacking the imagination to wonder, or, most likely, not knowing what to look for. That is something I hope to help change with this video about the many types of Cyclopean walls, as illustrated by Italian sites. It is obviously not true that all the ruins are the same. Some are way more interesting than others, depending on many factors, many personal. And in my view, a few of them old rocks are truly special. The special ones are the Cyclopean walls, the mind-boggling technique of 3D puzzling odd-shaped stones that popped all around the ancient world as fast as it went into disuse, with ancient sources attributing the construction to many magical creatures: Cyclopes, Pelasgians, Incas, long ears, etc. To start with, what all Cyclopean walls have in common is an absence. They do not have mortar. And there lies one mystery. Mortar is an old invention that makes building so much easier. Thus, for not to use mortar, one needs to have a strong reasoning. The most probable, I think, is that Cyclopean walls were used for earthworks and subject to percolation, soil water, that would erode the mortar and then damage the structure. In engineering terms, Cyclopean walls are an absolute wonder. They are water-resistant, earthquake-resistant, pretty unique visually, but all of that came at a cost. Time. The vast amounts of planning and work required to achieve these wonders are very hard to grasp. Much easier would be to build with ashlar masonry, meaning squared and smaller blocks, as in this case of the Severian Wall in Rome. The result is not so impressive nor solid, but it's cheaper to build. The Romans, being a very practical people, always preferred mortar and similar shaped stones. Another thing the Romans had was iron, and Cyclopean masonry mysteriously disappeared in the Bronze Age. From Japan to Peru, in all of Europe, and everywhere else, these constructions are pre-iron. Iron makes cutting stones much faster and unskilled, so the builders will no longer have the time to master the 3D puzzle. Polygonal masonry is not for the short-term minded. It requires a long build-up of knowledge, detailed planning, and excruciating hard work. It was built for the ages, and survived for ages. In most places, Cyclopean walls are the oldest constructions on site, with everything else lost or destroyed. Finally, in terms of finishing, Cyclopean walls vary significantly, sometimes within the same locale, with different styles fitted side by side, revealing how the multiple techniques were very well understood. With that, let's check on what to look for when admiring Cyclopean walls. The size of the stones, for one. This is obvious. Larger stones require harder planning, harder work. In Italy, it's Pirgi that shows off some of the biggest examples. Next comes fitting, ranging from tight to loose, or with the inclusion of smaller stones to save time on the assembly. Clearly, the tighter the fitting, the more impressive the result. The size of the fitting affects the slope. For the wall to be more vertical, the bigger and the well-fitted the stones have to be. And the depth of the stones is important to achieve a solid support. The fitting cannot be superficial, just on the surface. It should be fully 3D, otherwise the wall will slide and eventually collapse. The hardness of the stone also has to be taken into consideration. The Etruscans, an old people in Italy, used soft tuffo stone. That's why most of their buildings are now lost, unlike the older than the Etruscan Cyclopean walls that prefer moderately to hard rocks and stand the passage of time. There's also the shape. The more facings, the bigger the difficulty to assemble, with Amelia being the most striking example. Finally, just on the surface, that's not so important. Finishing can be quite distinct, bulbous, rough, polished, and also with knobs, although those last ones I could not find in Italy. Now that we've seen what to look for, we'll move on to investigate some other mysterious features. Today, we will check the multiple usages of Cyclopean walls. To this day, there are still many doubts about the purpose of these constructions, with some sites misattributed to easy-to-climb defensive walls or overly decorated military barracks. For what it's worth, in my experience, the best modern usage for Cyclopean masonry is to avoid tourist traps. Take Rome, for example. The Eternal City is a worldwide top tourist destination. So much so, you can wait an eternity, up to 3 hours at least, just to buy the ticket. And then, you still have to rub shoulders with thousands of other people, get the views obstructed by oversized bottoms, overpay for food, etc., etc. Whilst all that, just a couple of hours away, one can still find some almost magical locations, empty and welcoming. It only takes a bit of knowing. That, in a nutshell, is the motivation for this channel, getting to appreciate little-known sites with polygonal masonry. For this Italian appetizer, let's consider the main usages of polygonal walls, beyond that of protecting us from the barbarian hordes of tourists, I mean. Number 1 is earthworks. Polygonal masonry is mostly applied into leveling up terrain to create a terrace, or an acropolis, or even an island. Here, in Orbetello, we have the city sitting on an artificial island, created with the support of some quite large and fitted polygonal stones. Although it looks like quite a sad parking lot today, back in the day, these fine walls ensured that the city would not sink into the lagoon, and it looked awesome to seafaring visitors. Another set of stones impressing on the seafarers are the ones in ancient Pyrgi. The polygonal masonry in Pyrgi is the most impressive of the whole of Italy, either in size or in fitting. The Greek historian Strabo attributed this seaport to the Pelasgians, an ancient people that the Greeks considered to be the first of man, and as great builders as were the Cyclopes. Moving on, the polygonal walls in Amalia are now used to confuse engineers. These walls feature some of the highest multifaceted large stones. It should not have been easy to build. Just ask the engineers that have been scratching their heads trying to reassemble a short stint of collapsed wall. Nowadays, with lasers and 3D models, they are still having trouble. Imagine if they were illiterate people using just sand and diorite stones. The polygonal tech is not impressive just for the way it was built. The day-to-day usage can be quite nerdy. For example, polygonal walls can be a clock. It might seem weird, but several of the prehistoric buildings, like Stonehenge, are watches, not the mechanical type to measure seconds, but astronomical watches to measure years and millennia. I see another topic for a future video there. Suffice to say, Alatri is most likely one of those clocks. In Alatri, we find the best preserved polygonal complex. The whole citadel is still in place, and some of the features seem to have precise astronomical alignments, like Stonehenge, i.e., it could be a watch. Oh, and Alatri is said to have been founded by Kronos, the Greek god of time, see? Then we have the more common and less interesting usages. Processional ways, like in Segni, or doors into the afterlife, as in Alba Fusions, or showbiz, magical theaters, temples, like in Pietra Abondante. Well, these last examples are weird. We can't be sure, and it needs further investigation. What is certain is that polygonal masonry make up for a great road trip, safe from the aimless crowds. We'll be looking at something most walls, including Cyclopean, need: doors. Doors are an essential part of any wall, and, as everything else with polygonal masonry, even Cyclopean doors are intriguing. Interestingly enough, many Cyclopean walls have doors, but they do lack gates. When inspecting these walls openings, it's uncommon to find hinges, latches, or posts. Many openings on Cyclopean walls are apparently gateless, confirming these constructions are not defensive. In many cases, like the Porta Romana in Amelia, later occupants built fancy doors with strong gates. In other cases, Cyclopean walls remain open wide, defeating the purpose of defense. Just look to the sides of these entrances. Although without gates, there are plenty of closed doors in Cyclopean walls, to peek into them. Sometimes called gates into the afterlife, the closed doors in Cyclopean walls can be found in many places, not only in Italy but also elsewhere, like in Peru. In the extreme case, a door into the afterlife will be a false door design or a niche that has no obvious purpose beyond that of showing off the builder's prowess. As if making a straight wall with polygonal masonry wasn't hard enough, adding these intricate and pointless niches requires some hard motivation. Lazy historians will cop out, claiming that these niches are just ritualistic. Living gods would ask for it, for no reason, and then the dumb builders will just obey. However, in reality, early religions are more practical than they are credited for. Thus, what pleased the gods would likely have some other down-to-earth benefit, being it medical, agricultural, or structural. So, if the Cyclopean wall builders made these false doors, they would have some idea of why. And I'll share my personal best guess, hoping that's why you are still around watching. Let's start with a clarification. There are two main types of going nowhere doors in Cyclopean walls. The niches, as shown before, are not so deep and very decorative. And then there are the seemingly open doors that are actually closed behind. Today, we'll investigate the second type, doors that seem to have lost their way with time, of which we can find a few in Ferentino, and the best example being this one in Norba. This mysterious door sits just meters to the side of the main complex entrance, the Porta Maggiore, a gateless wide passage. There was no traffic needing a smaller door just there. Plus the fact that the nowhere door is placed a couple of meters above ground level should cut off any idea of going through there. Inside, what we can find behind the door is arguably even more surprising. At first glance, it's just rubble, but actually, it's a second and older Cyclopean wall. Yes, the door on the principal Cyclopean wall in Norba leads to an older Cyclopean wall just behind it. Look at this line of rocks over there. That's the original, older wall, and the door is not simply going nowhere. It is leading into that older wall. To understand all these apparently pointless constructions, we need some perspective on the overall site. Norba Antica sits on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the coastal plain. And what a view it has! The Norba precinct has a Cyclopean wall all around, including the sides facing the cliff, which again makes no sense in terms of defense. The whole idea of a cliffside town is to save on the fortification walls anyway. Cyclopean walls were not intended for defense, but for earthworks. They are retaining walls, creating a level plain to build on top, an acropolis. That's exactly what they had in Norba, in the most spectacular way. However, something has happened in the south-facing embankment, near the entrance to the city, where The ancients decided to build a second wall in front of the first one. The older wall behind is made of smaller stones, like those that go all around the locale and facing the precipice, whilst this new stretch, the one with the mysterious door to nowhere, is built with larger and finer polygonal masonry. Why? Probably because of this. The answer, I believe, is water. Draining water. Putting it simply, rainwater would flow through the older city facade, risking a landslide. So, the excellent Cyclopean engineers decide to build a new, stronger wall in front and to include this door to nowhere for extra drainage to release rainwater without the risk to the structure. One is excused to think that this is an anticlimactic explanation, but on further consideration, it's otherwise. Cyclopean walls are still standing after 3,000 years or more. It's an advanced technology reaching us from deep in the ancient times. Was lost in classical times, as the Romans, although they were great builders, did not have this know-how. The doors into nowhere confirm Cyclopean walls are much more than just the piling of odd-shaped stones, although that's impressive enough. They are a complex, ancient lost technology that, even today, many just don't suspect how sophisticated it is. Now that we've explained away the doors to nowhere, what about the other type, the doors into the afterlife? The niches. Well, the false doors, also called doors into the afterlife, is an ancient building concept that can be found around the world and not only in Cyclopean walls. Here's some examples from Egypt, where false doors are an essential part of the ancient religion. Ethiopia, as in the obelisk of Aksum. Or Cambodia. And there's also Peru, where we can find both the purely ritualistic type, the one being the false door carved into the side of a mountain, and another, the niches in polygonal walls, being the ones with one-night builders that I'm most interested in and will try to explain away. Sometimes said to be just decorative features as placeholders for statues, it's my opinion that the aesthetic effect is an afterthought, and the Cyclopean builders were in fact applying very advanced know-how that enabled these structures to survive for thousands of years and be standing where everything else is in ruins. In Italy, there are two sites with these puzzling features, Alatri and Alba Fucens. In Alatri, the niches are located in one corner of the amazing Acropolis and shaped irregularly, not fit for pedestals. Whilst in Alba Fucens, the niches are in all another setting. Despite not being very scenic, the city is the most intriguing of the bunch, with Cyclopean remainings that are quite unique. Alba Fucens was abandoned in the 10th century after a Saracen invasion, which would have been quite disturbing, considering how inland the city is. Before that, the city was continuously occupied by the Byzantines, the Romans, and other Latins, and even earlier by some Italic tribes that aren't credited with any construction skill. Even though the Romans did not use Cyclopean masonry anywhere else, not even in Rome, they are credited with the constructions in Alba Fucens, because the previous inhabitants were these primitive tribes, whilst the Cyclopean masonry is exceptionally sophisticated. In Alba Fucens, we can find, made in the Cyclopean style, some advanced buildings. There's a tunnel, said to be a cloaca or a sewage, and more impressive, a pressurized aqueduct with a siphon, the type of construction beyond any primitive tribe to accomplish, and that even the Romans avoided doing, due to the complexity of pushing water uphill. Eventually, what gives it all away is beside the doors to the afterlife. They sit in the corner of the city center, a locale that has many Roman constructions, with all the typical features, central heating, and the almost comical zebra crossings. Now, it also has some extensive mortar and brick constructions, on top of polygonal masonry. As the Romans would do, Cyclopean walls were not their cup of tea. It's too intricate and time-consuming, so the Romans wouldn't commit to building 3D puzzles like false doors. Elsewhere in Peru, where someone did commit to build the most exquisite and sophisticated polygonal masonry ever, we can find niches or false doors, as these ones in the Moon Temple near Machu Picchu. Inside the cave, we can find an apparent dollhouse without any clear use, considering the doors and windows are all false. On closer inspection to the Moon Temple, we can see some cracks around the false doors that are the result of overwhelming pressure and will be the final clue to solving the enigma. False doors or niches in Cyclopean walls are built because of this. The niches prevent the collapse of the retainer wall, not when it's caused by water, as for that they had the doors to nowhere or the drainage galleries. The niches are, I believe, the Cyclopean equivalent of the buttress in a dam, offering support to the slab. The same shape we can find in today's impressive water dams, accomplishing the same effect as the niches in Cyclopean walls, i.e., lateral compression to prevent the wall from bending outwards. This explanation covers the need and usage of false doors in Cyclopean walls, but it's not by any means exhaustive. For example, why there are 3 of them, both in Albafusians and in the Latri? Why not 2 or 4? I think one niche alone would not be enough to produce the compression effect desired, and modern-day buttress dams have plenty of niches. But why just 3, and to the side of a longer straight wall? I can't explain that. The Cyclopean engineers had many tricks up their sleeves. There you have it. Albafusians does not have the most spectacular or well-preserved Cyclopean walls, but it has the most advanced set of building applications, tunnels, pressurized aqueducts, and slab and buttress retaining walls. That's no work for an illiterate tribesman to make, since the older original builders of Albafusians were, in some ways, more advanced than the almighty Romans. So, how old are these walls? Well, very much older. And in the next video, I will prove it. Please like and subscribe to know when the proof is out.